The embodiment of evil. That's what the British Prime Minister called the ISIS terrorist group after the brutal savages beheaded a British aid worker. And now they're threatening to murder another one.
The United States is putting together a global coalition to attack ISIS, but many experts are asking if the president's plan goes far enough. Ephraim Graham has the story.
British aid worker David Haynes is now the third Western hostage the ISIS terror organization has killed.
David has been murdered in the most callous and brutal way imaginable by an organization which is the embodiment of evil.
There is now a global manhunt for Haynes's killers. It appears to be the same executioner with a British accent, as seen in the videos of Americans James Foley and Stephen Sotloff. Secretary of State John Kerry is in Paris today, pushing the president's plan to defeat ISIS and rallying U.S. allies to step up for the fight.
There are some that are clearly prepared to take action in the air alongside the United States.
Kerry has flip-flopped on whether the president's plan is a declaration of war or an aggressive counterterrorism operation. But no matter what you call it, many are still questioning if arming Syrian rebels and increasing airstrikes are enough. Senator Lindsey Graham warns there's no way the U.S. can defeat ISIS without American boots on the ground.
This is a turning point in the war on terror. We're fighting a terrorist army, not an organization. It's going to take an army to beat an army. And this idea we'll never have any boots on the ground to defeat them in Syria is fantasy. And all this has come home to roost over the last 3 years of incompetent decisions.
Former Secretary of State James Baker agrees with Graham's assessment, and so do some former U.S. intelligence officers.
The only way you're going to destroy this organization is to confront them on the ground and kill them, and to use surrogates in the region. Iraq? No, Iraq is having a tough time holding on to their own territory. Syria? Syria is involved in a civil war.
But as the debate continues, ISIS is growing stronger, with an estimated 30,000 troops and reports of an increasing bank account of nearly $3 million a day from oil smuggling, human trafficking, and more. One intelligence official tells the Associated Press the Islamic State's resources are bigger than those of any terrorist group in history. Some say we're seeing what President George W. Bush warned about in 2007 when he talked about the dangers of pulling out of Iraq too soon.
It would mean surrendering the future of Iraq to al-Qaeda. It would mean that we'd be risking mass killings on a horrific scale. It would mean we allow the terrorists to establish a safe haven in Iraq to replace the one they lost in Afghanistan. It would mean increasing the probability that American troops would have to return at some later date to confront an enemy that is even more dangerous.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Well, he was prophetic in that one. That was former President George Bush. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got to face what we're dealing with. This is a well-funded terrorist organization based on an ideology that is clearly expressed in the Quran. This isn't some fringe group. This isn't some offshoot of Islam. This is core Islamic teaching. And they call themselves the Islamic State. And the president gets on television and says, well, they're not really Islamic. Yes, they are, right at their heart. And I would like to offer to you this booklet that you really need to read if you haven't got it. We've had about 350,000 of these out so far, so it's a lot. But more people ought to have it. This is carefully researched by Islamic scholars who understand the Quran, understand the Hadith, understand the history of the matter. And the thing is Islam, religion of peace or war. It's here for you. You can just ask for it, and we'll give it to you free. Islam, religion of peace or war. Just say, well, I want that booklet, and we'll give you extra copies for your church if you want them. Well, al-Qaeda may be planning a new terrorist threat against American airplanes. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. Here's John.
Pat, the threat comes from a group of hardened jihadists out of Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, and Europe. Al-Qaeda veterans from Afghanistan and Pakistan went to Syria to join up with the al-Qaeda branch there. The jihadists are trying to recruit Europeans and Americans who can travel easily with Western passports. U.S. intelligence shows the group has been working with Yemeni bomb makers. They've already managed to place 3 bombs on U.S.-bound planes, though intelligence was able to prevent them from bringing down the aircraft. President Obama is planning to dramatically strengthen U.S. efforts to fight the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. The Wall Street Journal reports the move will include increased involvement from the U.S. military, along with sending portable hospitals, doctors, and healthcare experts. The current outbreak is already by far the worst in history, and scientists warn it could spread to 15 more African countries, potentially putting tens of millions of people at risk. Pat?
I want to underscore what was said about Ebola. This thing is awful. 1 drop of blood can infect somebody with this. We understand in years gone by, bat droppings in caves were responsible for the spread of the disease. Monkeys may be having it. Who knows what other animals are conveying this disease that spread out into the human population. But it is a hideous thing where the organs of the body decompose and the person has used the term, they bleed out from every orifice of the body. And of course, assuming they're in an airplane or a train or a bus, and that stuff gets out, then everybody is liable to be infected, and then it spreads like wildfire. So there are thousands of cases now, maybe 85, 8,900, 9,000. We don't know. The numbers are so vague, but it's growing rapidly, and it is an extraordinarily vicious disease. They find that if somebody can get emergency treatment like we're giving them down in Atlanta and now in other hospitals, and if they can have appropriate nutrition and appropriate hydration so they can get adequate water, they can survive this stuff. But unless they get immediate treatment of that nature, they're going to die. And the death rate is closer to 100% of those who are infected. John?
Pat, back here at home, a new study suggests that many men who are prosecuted for paying for sex with trafficked children get away with their crime. And as Heather Sells reports, the study also disturbingly found the average victim is only 14 years old.
The numbers are staggering. An estimated 100,000 children trafficked each year in the U.S. So far, one of the best tools in fighting this tragedy has been shutting down the demand.
If we do not focus on the buyer, we have to sacrifice more of our children to this market of misery.
Now, new research shows that these buyers are getting away with their crimes. They somehow manage to avoid sex trafficking charges and the penalties that go with them.
There need to be explicit statutes that say this is a crime, and if you're prosecuted for this time, you will do the time.
Shared Hope and Arizona State University analyzed the arrests of more than 100 buyers. The results: 26% of those prosecuted served no time. 2/3 of the guilty enjoyed suspended sentences, and the average time served added up to just 18 months. Victim advocates say this weak attempt at justice won't deter buyers, and the public must understand the growing consequences facing child victims.
Very often, the individuals who buy sex from children are very violent in their sexual encounters with these children. So children will be marked for the rest of their lives by what is being done to them by the buyer.
The question now, what kind of action will the states take? This map and table shows which states have passed anti-demand laws and which states have laws to protect child victims from prosecution. Activists hope growing awareness and tougher laws will help stop the growing business of paying for sex with kids. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Pat, clearly we need more laws on the books to target these adult buyers.
Well, we need more than that. We need a society that looks askance at this kind of conduct. And I think the trafficking of women, let's face it, if you traffic in cocaine, you get the cocaine and you buy it and then you sell it. That's one transaction, but then your supply is gone. You have a girl and you sell her every night, sometimes 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 times a night. Then you sell her again and again and again, and the profits are huge. And that's why the organized crime is getting into it. And I tell you, the penalty, as far as I was concerned, would be the death penalty for people involved in this. And, you know, I would give a shoot on demand kind of order to some of the people involved, in, especially overseas, to these gangs. They are ruining the lives. They might as well be murdering these girls, and it's terrible what's done to them. They use them up, and then they get diseases, and then they cast them aside, and then they're ruined forever, and then they'll die a horrible death. I mean, it's a terrible, terrible thing that is being done. And the biggest thing we should do is take off the books as quick as we can any kind of criminal penalties against those girls who are trafficked, so that they'll feel free to go talk to the police without fear of being put in jail themselves. So oftentimes we prosecute the girls for prostitution instead of prosecuting the pimp or the people back behind the pimps who are making this happen. So it is a major thing. 1 million people a year are trafficked. Young boys, young girls, trafficked for not only sex, but for various types of forced slavery. It's horrible. We should not allow that in the world. John.
Pat, the United States is experiencing extreme weather from coast to coast, from heat waves and wildfires in the west to freezing and flooding in the east. In California, dozens of homes are threatened as firefighters battle a wildfire, and hundreds of people have lost power.
We're probably going to lose everything in the refrigerator and freezer.
Temperatures are only expected to rise, reaching up to 105 degrees in the coming days. At the same time, a summer snowstorm hit parts of 4 western states, while temperatures hovered in the 50s in Chicago. And that chill is now making its way east. Pat?
We're going to be doing a story, I believe, on Wednesday about the climate shift. We do not have global warming. We have massive global cooling. And we will focus, among other things, on Antarctica, where the ice shield has grown dramatically. Instead of melting, it is growing. Now, maybe the North Pole is melting somewhat, but not in the southern climes, not in Antarctica. So our planet is going to a period of cooling. And all this nonsense about global warming makes something nice for people who want to take control of all the electric power in America, but they're not really going to deal with the major issue, which is the fact that we have sunspots, we have the turning of the planetary alignment, we have cyclical weather, and we're going into a cold spot, not a hot spot. John?
Pat, America could be facing a severe national crisis in the years ahead as the nation gets fatter and older. USA Today says because of those trends, nearly half of all adults either have prediabetes or diabetes itself, and that raises the risk of heart attacks, blindness, amputations, and cancer. Prediabetes often doesn't have any symptoms. It's found through blood tests, and that means millions of Americans could be at risk. One health expert tells the paper the U.S. is heading for much higher health care costs and more disability, but there is hope. Another health expert for the University of Kentucky tells USA Today that weight loss is the best way to fight the disease, and Patty also says it's far more powerful than any drug.
Amen.
Yeah, you've been saying that for a long time.
For years. You know, Terry, I mentioned years ago, I studied a course in seminary called Biblical Archaeology. It was a wonderful course. A guy named Dewey Beagle had written a book about it, and he taught us. It was a wonderful course, Biblical Archaeology. Well, in that book, we had pictures of people from Sumer and Ur of Chaldees in that area, you know, the early. And there were years when these people were vigorous, muscular, athletic, dominant. And then a couple hundred years later, you find the same pottery. Here they have paunches.
Really?
Yeah, they look like middle-aged Americans.
Enjoying the blessing
of all the sure. They've got slaves working for them now, and they don't have to do as much hard work, and they've got plenty of money. And so they're eating a lot, and they're not exercising. And guess what? Their civilization fell. But it's so interesting. You can see them, and we see it now. I was down at Opryland. And you know, in Opryland, they have an outdoor dining area. You've been there.
Yes.
It's sort of a inner court. And they have a bridge that goes across, and you're sitting down underneath eating. And I said to my wife, I said, look up there. And I mean, these fat people, one after the other, were traipsing across that bridge, and you could see them underneath and look down. And this is Mr. and Mrs. Middle America, because we're eating at fast food restaurants, we're eating so much starchy food, we're eating way too much sugar, and our food has too much salt in it. And
not getting enough exercise.
And they're not getting enough exercise. And there's your diabetes, and there's your sickness, and it's just horrible to think. But if you say anything about that, then of course you have broken the law. If you hire somebody, don't hire somebody because of being overweight, then you have the Americans with Disability Act. You violated that. So the government is saying you must be nice to fat people, whether or not, and you can't tell them your health will be better if you just lose some of that weight.
That's true.
You can't do that.
I think you've just told them.
I just told them. But I mean, I just think it's so easy. You know, I've, triple strength green tea, some little pills, triple strength non-caffeine green tea, and acetyl L-carnitine along with alpha-lipoic, and the weight would just pour off.
Yeah, you said that really, really did it for you.
Unbelievable. You can lose 30, 40 pounds with no sweat, and it's so easy. But somebody do a little bit of walking, a little bit of exercise, get a total gym. I'm a fan of the total gym. Anything to move around a bit, and we can beat this thing. But so help me, to see somebody die of diabetes is horrible. I had a dear friend who got diabetes, and to see him, he was broken. He was an athletic, dynamic human being. And then to see what that disease did to him, it was just horrible. It's horrible when he finally died. But
I think the fact that we sit at computers so much today has a lot to do with that too. So you're right. Get up and move.
Well, we're sitting here. We ought to. Please don't give me a treadmill. I just can't stand it. But I do work out. I lift weights and things. But you don't have to lift heavy weights. Just little weights.
It
20
doesn't
pounds.
take very much. What did we say last week on the show? If every hour you get up at your office and you walk for 5 minutes.
Oh, that'll do it. But we just can't have, we can't, diabetes is too horrible to contemplate. And the pre-diabetes, what they're saying is, we've just got to lose some weight. It's just the way it is.
A 24-year-old American held in North Korea faces 6 years of hard labor in a prison camp. The country's Supreme Court convicted Matthew Miller of espionage, accusing him of, quote, hostile acts against the government. Miller was arrested in April after reportedly claiming to seek asylum, but Pyongyang says it was a ruse so he could investigate the country's human rights. North Korea now has 3 American prisoners, 56-year-old Jeffrey Fowl and Korean-American missionary Kenneth Bay. CBN is using the Superbook to introduce children to the Bible in Bulgaria. 1 in 7 of the country's population is under the age of 14, and in October, they'll be able to watch biblical lessons in their own language on national TV. To launch Superbook, ministry teams have begun a 2-year project to take the animated series to Bulgarian towns and villages. The free Superbook parties in town squares attract both children and their parents. Well, if you want to find out more about what CBN is doing around the world, you can log on to cbn.com/international.